So in terms of the future, what's your ambitions? Like, where do you see this going? What would you like to happen?
How long you got? Genuinely just try and grow it to but the response has been it's been really positive so far, and people are really keen to hear more about it. I mean, it's trying. Fraser and I, and then the other committee members I'm led to believe, got invited to be in the roundtable discussion with Law Society about disability policy. That's the sort of stuff that the whole thing was set up for. But part of what we're doing is that, because I've mentioned that specific things with the 4G in court and that, but we need to know what actual issues people have on a day-to-day basis in the sector, and we're doing that through surveys, and we're going to survey our members and see what things keep cropping up, and then kind of dealing with those issues, but it'll just be a continuous process of identifying issues, solving them, expanding, raising awareness, and then hopefully getting to younger people as well down the line. Do
you think the law needs to be strengthened? Do you think there needs to be additional legislation? Do you think there's like a legal mechanism?
I'm not. As I'm sure you know, over the past 27 minutes, I'm not nearly clever enough to know that much about the equality law at this point. Rachel Wallace, for example, she'd be the kind of person to ask in that, but it's all a learning process, and I'm having to actually look at the Equality Act for the first time in about 7 years because of this group, and I think there's certainly issues have been raised in our meetings about areas of the statute, but I'm not smart enough at this point to know how to improve it generally.
We had a meeting today in the current issues group. So we have 3 working groups: a legal firm engagement group, an education group, and a current issues group. And we were meeting today with the current issues group to discuss the difficulty of professional privilege and whether it applies to assistance for people with disabilities. So if a person needed assistance during a client interview, for example, whether their privilege between the solicitor and the client would extend to the +1. And that's a really complex legal area being common law. However, at the moment, we don't believe that it does. And there's a real concern that may put an employer off hiring someone with a disability if their reasonable adjustments can't be met due to legal reasons. So we're in the process of applying for free legal advice from the Faculty of Advocates through their website and trying to get a professional legal opinion on that. But it's a complex area of law that I don't see as being addressed.
Could the assistant, sign a non-disclosure or something, like a contractual type obligation? Would that work?
Would that be sufficient, in your opinion? I was going to ask you this question anyway.
I'm not sure. I mean, non-disclosures it's a very American concept, isn't it? But I know a lot of employers have employees sign confidentiality type agreements as part of their employment contract. I'm not a commercial lawyer, nor am I an employment lawyer, but I know that is in circulation, confidentiality type agreements that you enter into your employer. So I just don't know. But the PA, they technically wouldn't be an employee of the law firm, I presume. And would be a freelancer. They would be self-employed, and it would be on like an hourly basis or whatever. So I don't know whether a separate contractual arrangement could be, or whether that would be a sufficient protection, as you say, because client privilege is a foundation in common law, as you say. So no, I'm really not sure. You're obviously speaking to the right people. I'm just wondering.
Yeah,
I'm just spitballing.
As a difficulty, we had a discussion today about whether somebody that needed notes taken for them, for example, they're having a conversation, whether that person would be protected by privilege if they were funded through the Department of Work and Pensions and their access to the work scheme, whether that person would be a legal person from the law firm. So yeah, those are the kind of questions that we're having to ask at the moment, and the reason that we're having to ask them is to ensure that employers have the confidence that hiring someone with a disability or a reasonable adjustment of that nature isn't indirectly discriminated against because of legal processes that might not be in place yet. So yeah, those are the kind of questions that we're asking at the moment.
Yeah, has the law caught up sufficiently with where we are now? where you can have access to PAs, where that's become, an accessibility type mechanism for the solicitor. Yes, because presumably maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, that wasn't something as common.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we want the profession to move in the direction where people that need that type of support aren't discriminated against, then we do need to look at the system and see if the right support's in place. So we are seeking legal advice on that at the moment, and hopefully it comes and we get that reassurance that we'd then be able to offer an employer, a prospective employer.
I would definitely be interested in that, because we have psychotherapists that sometimes sit in as supporters, mostly in court. So it's, it's people giving evidence. So it's not the same situation, but I wonder what would happen during a consultation where it's advice being given. So I'd be very interested in the outcome of that as well.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure and share that with you then. Are they employed by the firm, Elizabeth?
So historically, no, but we now have an in-house trauma therapist that works with us, who is an employee. So I'd feel a bit more comfortable with that, because obviously that's part, there's confidentiality type agreements. I think there's more protection when the person is an employee. But if you were to use somebody, a freelancer, I'm not sure. So I would be interested in it, because it's something that we're seeing more and more, is using supporters to assist people with, significant mental health problems that are having to tell their story again, and it's very, very triggering. I do a lot of work with trauma aware. I mean, I think you've probably heard this from Melissa Rutherford. I think she does a lot of this stuff, but we've tried to incorporate this kind of trauma aware response so clients are protected, because my business area is medical trauma, and obviously the first thing the person has to do is discuss their trauma to essentially strangers, and it can be highly triggering and can set off a cycle, and it's trying to do that in a safe way, so you don't open Pandora's box and then the person leaves the office and they're more traumatized than what they otherwise need to be. So that's the kind of stuff that we're working on just now.
The overlap I saw between trauma and ourselves is that there's now a basic requirement for compassion and a basic requirement for, I think, pause is needed when dealing with, obviously trauma is more kind of accused in court or witnesses, etc. But the DBS is more about even your solicitor, for example, or someone that works within law, and that not all situations are equal. I mean, regarding the problem is, the kind of paradox is that to get the help you need, you're going to have to declare to someone or to some that what your disability is to garner the help. So it's that kind of balancing act where people, if they fear kind of retribution kind of publicly for doing so, or within a work environment, might not feel it's worth their while to declare it, for the help they'll get, because the help isn't sufficient. And again, in the profession, I've not really had a serious problem with it, but in the university, in hindsight, I'd actually say that by my experience, where it wasn't actually worth me declaring it, and I kind of wish I hadn't, because the help just wasn't beneficial, and it was so many hurdles to get it.
It's just really depressing, isn't it, that you were, perhaps better off not disclosing due to what you had.
So I've done that again. I said I was going to try and lighten the mood, and I brought it down again.
Yeah. But certainly, I mean, it seems that your firm's been supportive.
My brother, Matthew, and Bobby Reese, the other partner, and criminal law it's so fast paced, and it's so there's so many different priorities, and the need to survive given how meagre and disgracefully low the legal aid rates are. That, I mean, you're talking about adjustments that do. We've got iPad system, kind of digitised filing system, very few firms have, but in terms of serious physical adjustments, they wouldn't be possible with legal aid, whether it's criminal or civil, and that's another discussion for another day. But it's a lot of the individual attitudes. We had a sheriff on for one of our meetings, and he was very, very supportive. and he actually advised that the sheriff that gives the judicial training changed it to incorporate lawyers and people that work in the court for disabled, not just accused or witnesses. But a lot of it's still individual attitudes, and it's trying to make more people supportive whilst also changing attitudes collectively.
I did a really good training session with Inclusion Scotland on this very subject matter about changing attitude, and it was really, really good because it's a disabled-led organisation, so everybody on the board of directors has a disability, and we all think we don't have prejudices, but we do, and it was case studies of situations, and you were put into like focus groups, and you had to discuss a particular case study, and then you had to present back to the group, and then your attitudes were being challenged by someone with a disability, and you were having to rethink things. And I think training programs like that some of that really, really changed my attitude. For instance, like one of the case study was giving candidates for interview the questions in advance. So some people with anxiety, you would give the questions in advance. And at first I had an issue with that because I felt in some way, litigation, you will be asked questions, you will be asked things on the hoof, you will have to work under pressure. That's an unfair advantage. And I had to kind of dissect that. And then my view was challenged by the panel. And what I learned was that actually it wasn't an unfair advantage. It was the fact that psychologically they would feel better if they had 10 minutes or 15 minutes to know roughly what the questions are. It was an unusual situation. An interview is an artificial situation. In a workplace, they'll be given the tools to answer questions on the hoof, under pressure, in court, etc., because they go into court prepared. So that was the way that my attitude was kind of dissected. And that was really, really useful because you have to be reflective, don't you, and think, well, could I be better? Do I have prejudice? Do I have bias? And try and challenge your belief system.
Well, different perspectives and different abilities means that you're learning all the time as well, And I never foresaw any kind of doing any of this stuff, to be frank with you. I was just kind of focusing on surviving myself, but it does open up a totally new way of like, oh, I would have done this in the past, but then now I've realised, well, I may need to consider this point, or I may need to stop and wonder, has this person got this issue, But I gradually, kind of society we're changing towards that, but I think you're right, Elizabeth, legislatively, and Fraser touched this, obviously there might be some kind of backdated issues with that, where the legislation needs to catch up with the attitudes, and the structures of these organisations, and whether it's court or university. That's my experience.
Of course. So is there anything else that people would like to add? Anything that you would like to tell the listeners and viewers?
What I'd say generally is that I say this at the meetings that I'm very new to the profession. I'm far from an expert in this stuff. If people have ideas, if people have issues to come to Disabling Barrier Scotland, please feel free. Any voice kind of supporting disability inclusion is a good one, and there's no ego involved in any of this. That I've got so much to learn in all this, and that I'm kind of having to do it whilst as part of the organisation, and that any input generally has been very beneficial so far. So don't feel as if your opinion won't be valued, or it won't be an important part of the group going forward, if it's got something to add.
And Fraser, what would you say to someone hoping to join the group?
So I'd say to members that we are a very welcoming group that really offers peer support, and you'll get to hear about how other people are managing their health conditions and disabilities in their employment. And even just that knowledge can really benefit your own career and help with your career progression. And to those that would want to come along to our insight events, we have them monthly. So we have guest speakers from charities and those that have disabilities telling us about their health conditions, and it's really informative. I'd recommend to those working within the profession that don't have a disability to come along and find out more about how you can support your colleague that may want to disclose their disability or may be having difficulties in managing their health condition, how you can help remove the barriers in their life. I would definitely recommend coming along to the events for that reason.
And finally, entrance fees only a few £1,000, and it goes straight to my bank account as well. So there's no conflict there, you know. If you try that, say that again, deadpan, and see if anyone actually, after listening for like 40 minutes, like, oh wait, they're actually just for a profit.
I take it it's free to join. Is that
yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's free to join.
We'll just clarify that. Well, it sounds like you're doing wonderful work, and obviously I think this will grow in strength and in numbers, and who knows what the future will bring.
Yeah, thank you. We've got some really exciting opportunities coming up in terms of helping to create a legal access scheme in Scotland and also hosting our first in-person event. Those are two main goals that we're working on at the moment. So a lot of exciting things happening over the next couple of months, and the rate that we've grown at today is incredible. So really looking forward to kicking on now.
And if we're looking for updates, where's the best place to get them? Do you have like a page that we should follow or anything that we should
we
be
have
doing?
a LinkedIn page. So we have a LinkedIn page, and you can join us through the Join Us button on our homepage on LinkedIn. And we're working on getting a website together, so hopefully that'll be in the works over the next couple of weeks.
Great.
Yeah, the reason that stuff still happened yet is we're trying to register as a charity and gain funding through kind of parties who would look to support us, you know. Fraser and I have LinkedIn accounts, I have Twitter account, I rant on some things about it as well, so there's kind of various platforms, and then our email as well, which is, what's our email again?
disablingbarrierscotland@gmail.com.
Rolls off
so
the
just
tongue.
our name.
There you go. Nice and easy. Well, thank you very much, Tom, Fraser. It's been great hearing from you.
All right, thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was so nice of you to host us.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it.